Welcome to the Mindspo podcast. My name is Rochelle Fox. I am your host. And if you have been waiting for a podcast episode and wondered where I was, then hi, I'm back. I know I've been on a little bit of a hiatus, but there has been a lot happening in my world. And honestly, the universe has had some beautiful twists and turns for me that I did not plan, did not expect. And as I record this right here, right now, I am sitting in what I can only describe as my dream apartment in Budapest. I have just moved to Hungary, to Budapest, to do a little chapter of my life in. And this has been something that has been on my heart and in my mind for a decade. And it actually really makes me emotional to record this episode because I think we hear a lot about intuition and trusting your gut and the power of connecting things and that everything happens in divine time. But sometimes that just doesn't make sense and we don't really hear examples of that. But I feel like me ending up in Budapest in this apartment at this time in my life is really an example of divine timing and trusting your gut and following your intuition. And honestly, listening to the signs from the universe and tuning into those subtle little voices that you know are telling you what to do, where to go, what turn to make. And I know that can sometimes be challenging. And I am someone I feel over the last 10 years that has really honed in on listening to my intuition. This is a superpower of mine. And it was something that I never used to have access to. I never used to be able to tune into subtle energies or signs from the universe or any of that stuff. I was someone that was very switched off from anything other than what I could see in the material realm. I was a very logical, very systematic, very fact-based person. And over the last decade, I have definitely changed my relationship with reality. And I have become a lot more intuitive and a lot more tuned in to something that I can't see, I can't quite explain, but is very real and very there. And I feel like if you're a regular listener on this podcast, I probably have held back a little bit of my spiritual side. Like, obviously, this is a podcast all about manifesting and personal growth and all of the things, but I have tended to lean more into facts and the science and just more, I would say, more grounded based advice. And I think that's been a big part of my journey because I've really wanted to help people understand how this stuff works from a logical lens. But today's podcast isn't necessarily going to be about the logical. It is going to be about the mystical, the subtle, the divine, the stuff that we can't necessarily see, explain, but we can definitely feel and hear if we tune in and tap into it. So with all of that said, in today's episode, I want to share with you a little bit of a story time of how I ended up in Budapest, why this move to Budapest is significant for me, because I'm sure many of you listening are like, what are you doing, Rochelle? Why are you in Budapest? Why did you leave Bali? Why did you leave Australia again? I thought you were going to Dubai. I feel like my life doesn't really make sense to anyone other than me, and that's okay because it doesn't need to make sense to anyone other than me. I definitely do not live my life for anyone other than myself and my partner and the people closest to me. I'm not doing things that are trending or cool or necessarily make logical sense, but they make a lot of sense to me. And this move has been divinely guided, divinely timed, and I just feel so on track for my life. And when I really think about what it is that I desire for you, my incredible community, is I want you to feel on track for your own life. I want you to feel divinely guided. I want you to feel aligned with your true essence and your true path, because it is so easy to look at everyone else's life and to look at everyone else's timeline and to think that you need to be somewhere other than where you are, or to think that you need to change your life in order to make it work with what's expected of you or where you should be on this timeline, making this amount of money, doing this thing. And it can be really confusing living in such a digitally connected space and such a digitally connected time, because I feel we've lost touch with our true essence, our true alignment, like what it is we really desire for our life, because we're constantly looking at everyone else's life and comparing where we are to where someone else is. But one of the things things I've learned about my life and my own journey is that I cannot compare my life or my timeline to anyone else because there is only one of me and there's only one of you, and your life is your own. It is not something that can be copied. It is not something that can be replicated. It is your own divine journey. And the more you live in alignment with yourself and you listen to your own gut and do things that make sense for you, the happier, more vibrant, and more at peace you're going to be. And honestly, the more fun you're going to have along the way. So now I want to take you on a bit of a story time. I want to take you all the way back to 2015, which is a decade ago, which is when my whole entire relationship and I guess the invisible string that I have always had to Budapest started. So back in 2015, I did my first ever Europe trip. I did it with Sol, who is my partner of 14 years and the co-founder of Mindspo. And this was right after my spiritual awakening. This was a few years into my healing journey. And Chris was the one that really pressured me to do this Europe trip. Before traveling on this Europe trip, I hadn't really been interested in travel. I traveled with my parents a few times and I'd definitely seen a little bit of the world, but I did not have the travel bug, so to speak. I was someone that wanted to stay comfortable. I wanted to stay in my own space with my own people. I wanted to be in the bubble of Sydney, and that was my world. I didn't really have an awareness of anything outside of that. And I think Sol had like a wisdom that I didn't have at that age, which was very much needed to get out and see things like beyond the bubble that I had put myself in. I needed to expand my horizons. So we went on this Europe trip, and on this Europe trip, we went to all the classic places. We went to Germany, which is where Sol's family is from, and we went to Berlin. We went to Paris, and we also went to Prague, and then we had Budapest on the list. And I remember when we were putting this list together, out of all of the places that we had decided to go, Budapest was the one that I was least excited about, and I had absolutely no expectations. It was kind of just something that we had put on the list, but I was like, why are we going there? What's there? I didn't have any idea of Budapest. It didn't have something like the Eiffel Tower that France had. It had no identity in my head. I had no subconscious program of what Budapest was. And because of this, I had no expectation. And the funny thing about expectation is I feel like, especially when it comes to travel and experiences, sometimes expectations can be to our detriment, because I remember being completely underwhelmed by Paris. Don't get me wrong, I do love Paris and I think French people are incredible and the culture's gorgeous. However, I definitely had some fairy tale Disney fantasy bullshit movie idea in my head about what Paris was, and I found it a lot more grungy and a lot more, just heavy than what it was in my head. Anyway, so I had all these expectations in my head about all the places we were going other than Budapest. And I'll never forget when I arrived in Budapest. I walked around the city, and during the first day that I walked around the city, I got back home and I had a sore neck. My neck was so sore and I couldn't figure out what I'd done. I was like, I haven't done any exercise. What's going on? I must have pulled my neck. And then the next day when I was out with the sore neck again, I realized I have a sore neck from looking up so much. My neck is literally sore because I am so awestruck by this city. I am constantly looking up. I'm constantly staring at all of the buildings, all of the architecture. I'm constantly using my eyes to look around me because I've never felt or seen anything like this. Budapest had this like grandeur to it. It just had this magnetic, like opulent energy. It was all marble and tall and all ornate. There was just like so many beautiful details on the buildings. And it just had this, I think, this expensive, abundant, like really expansive energy to it that I wasn't ever expecting. And if I really think back to it, I was expecting to have the experience that I had in Budapest in somewhere like Paris. I thought Paris was going to be this like awestruck, incredible place that I was going to fall in love with, but I didn't personally have that vibrational connection with Paris. But when I came here, I fell in love so much that we ended up extending our Airbnb from 1 week to 2 weeks. And every single night that I was here in Budapest back in 2015, I would go for a walk by myself. And back then, that was like a really big thing for me. I was someone that was very anxiously attached to my partner. I was very nervous about travel, very nervous about danger and being unsafe. So I never really did things by myself. But in Budapest, I felt so independent. I would literally walk out of the Airbnb and I would go for a beautiful walk along the river, which has all of these incredible bridges in Budapest. And I would go every single night. And it would just be this romantic, this safe, beautiful ritual that I would do every single night that I was here. And I felt like throughout my whole entire Europe trip, it was quite dysregulating. So many things were going on. As soon as I got to Budapest, it just felt safe. It just felt like I found routine. It felt like I found safety and just this ease that I hadn't experienced anywhere else in Europe. And then at the time, there was this song that had come out a few years beforehand. And it was this song, I'm going to read you the lyrics. What is it called? It's a song by George Ezra, and it's literally called Budapest. And I was playing this song non-stop when I was in Budapest back in 2015. And the beginning lyrics of the song is, "My house in Budapest, my hidden treasure chest, my golden grand piano, my beautiful Castarillo." I can never say that word, Castarillo. And Castarillo in Spanish means castle. And I just had this massive connection with this song. And I remember turning around to Sol, and it's all the way back in 2015. And I said to him, one day I'm going to write a book here. One day I'm going to come back to Budapest and I am going to write a book in this city. I'm just in love with this city. There's something about it. Now, that was all the way back in 2015. And 10 years obviously passed since then. We're now in 2025. And it has been 10 years since I have been to Budapest. Around 2 months ago, back in Sydney, with the last time I was recording this podcast, the last episode that was up. During that time, Sol and I were trying to figure out where we were going next. So for those of you who don't know, we let go of our place in Bali. We've always had like a house in Bali for years, and we decided that our Bali chapter is over for now. We still have our incredible retreats running there. We still have our facilitators, the self-love program. That is all happening, and we've hired incredible people to be running that business and really expanding it and improving it without us, which has been incredible. But our personal chapter in Bali felt very, very done for now. So during that time, Sol and I were trying to figure out what our next steps are. We know we're not moving back to Australia. We're not Australian residents anymore. We haven't been for a really long time. It's somewhere that we go and we visit and we holiday, but it's not our home anymore. We'll always be Aussies because we're obviously citizens of Australia, but it's just not where we're based. And our plan was to go to Dubai. Now, moving forward in my life, Dubai is going to continually play like a massive role. I see Dubai as my home base. It is the place that I continuously go back to. It's where I'm building a lot of my businesses. It's where I've got a lot of community. That's where a lot of opportunities are. I freaking love Dubai. So we actually found a place in Dubai and we had booked it for 2 months. And we, at the time, found an Airbnb because we were like, you know what, we're going to go there. We're going to get a longer lease place in Dubai and really set things up again there more. But we want to just get somewhere like in the interim while we go and look at other places. So we booked this Airbnb in Dubai and we booked it for, I think it was 2.5 months, and it was a beautiful place. And it was very specifically a place that we wanted to go to film content in. Because as you guys know, that's part of my job. It's part of what I do. I have a lot of brand new programs and really exciting things happening on the app, as well as in Mindspo and our courses and everything this year. And I wanted somewhere that felt very expansive to film in. So we booked this place in Dubai and we paid for it. And that was the plan. You know, it was all sorted. Now, once we booked that place, it was very funny because Chris, all of a sudden, maybe 2-3 weeks after booking that place, he turns to me and he's like, "Oh, remember Budapest?" And in that instant, I remember my heart just having this electric feeling. I was like, "Yeah, of course I remember Budapest." And he says, "I've been looking at these rental places in Budapest and there's some really beautiful apartments in Budapest. Like we should have a look at some of the property there." And look, this isn't an unusual thing for Sol and I to do. We are so nomadic. We just live our life with a roll of a dice. That's how we've been living our lives for a really long time. But when he mentioned Budapest, there was just something in my heart that just got really excited. And I remember I turned to him and I was like, "Why are we going to look at that though? We're going to Dubai." He's like, "Yeah, I know we're going to Dubai, but just have a look at this place that I found." So he sends me this place, and this place has a golden grand piano. It has this big, beautiful, expansive bookshelf. It has these tall, white, opulent ceilings. It has this incredible marble kitchen. It has all of this modern and Art Deco furniture. It has 2 spare bedrooms. It has aircon throughout. It has double marble sinks and a bathroom and a bathtub and a walk-through wardrobe. And I'm looking at this apartment and I'm literally having these electric feelings. I'm like, this is my dream apartment. Sol and I have always talked about going to Europe for a chapter. Obviously, like that, Europe is always going to be a big part of our lives because Sol's original heritage is from Germany. And we've always said like, oh, we'd love to live in Europe for a chapter. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking at this place and it literally looks like my higher self has designed my dream apartment and it's in Budapest. And I can't describe how this felt. It's so crazy sometimes when something on your vision board really manifests in real life, or you see something that you have been imagining or visualizing in your mind just there in front of you. And when it comes to apartments and places in the world, I very rarely find places that are really my vibe and my energy. I think the Mindspo mansion, which we renovated in Bali, that was definitely my vibe and my energy, but I created that from the ground up. But I've hardly ever looked on Airbnb or looked at other places and other real estate agents and found things that really match the energy that I'm looking to create. But this place, this had everything. And I remember feeling really sad because I was just like, why are you showing this to me? This is an absolute tease. This was not in the plan. We already have somewhere booked in Dubai. This is somewhere that is like a long-term rental. We've already rented somewhere in Dubai. And I was just like frustrated, but also thanks for showing me and literally teasing me with my vision board and like this alternative reality that's not going to happen, trying to put it outside of my head. And I remember I closed the tab down and I had it in my phone and I continued throughout my day and I kept coming back and looking at this apartment. Now, this process of continually looking at this apartment continued for around 2 weeks. Every single day, Sol or I would just mention to each other like, oh, that apartment. Like it would just continuously come up in conversation. So after 2 weeks of this happening, Sol finally turns to me and says, I'm going to message the place in Dubai and see if we can cancel the booking. And I said, don't message them. Just go and check what their cancellation policy is. And if it's a flexible cancellation policy and we're not going to lose our money, maybe we can see if we can cancel it and see if this Budapest place is still available. So he looks at the policy. Of course, it's not the flexible one. We would lose all of our money. It would also impact our Airbnb score. And then we're like, you know what? This is crazy talk. Let's just stick with the plan. We're going to Dubai. So we stay focused on the Dubai plan. We leave everything as it is and we continue throughout our day. Now, for the next week, both of us keep looking at this listing every single day without talking to each other about it, but we're thinking about it nonstop. I see it's open on the tabs on his computer. He catches me looking at it on the phone, on the couch instead of watching TV. Like we are quite literally obsessed with this place, but we're not canceling Dubai. We're sticking with the plan. And even though I said I was sticking to the plan, I secretly started looking at a lot more things to guide me to just feel out if I was making the right decision. And one of the tools that I use is actually something called Astrocartography. Now, Astrocartography is this incredible tool where you can give a astrologer or an astrocartographer, or in my instance, I actually use ChatGPT Deep Research. But what you can do is you can use your birth time, your full name, and where you were born, and you can use this information to get a map of the world of where your energy centers lie and where there are like energetic places for you in the world that represent certain things that correlate with the stars and correlate with your specific birth chart. Now, astrocartography is a whole entire realm of itself, and I probably really would like to get an astrocartographer on the podcast in the future because it is something that I find incredibly fascinating, and I would always recommend going and getting like a professional reading. But I decided to use ChatGPT because I was just super curious, and I used Deep Research, and I'm going to put the prompt that I used for the Deep Research and to find out my astrocartography down in the description. And what I did is I gave it my birth time, this prompt, and all of my information, and then it gave me back this in-depth reading of all the places in the world that would be good for me to move or the places that might be challenging. And of course, on that reading is none other than Budapest. So my Sun MC line, which is one of the most powerful lines for you to move to, runs right through Budapest. And for me, that was just another sign in the many signs that have been happening. And then next thing, you won't guess what happened. Out of nowhere, a week later, Sol makes this like noise from the kitchen, the kind of noise where you think, oh my God, someone's rather just died or you've just found out you've won the lottery. Like, what is going on? And he says, you are not going to believe it. And I said to him, what? He said, the Dubai place just cancelled our 2-month booking. And I was like, what? We have never in our decade-long relationship with Airbnb ever had anyone cancel a booking on us. This place, it was not a cheap place. Like it was a really nice place. We paid really good money to go there. It was an apartment that we were specifically going to film in. It was a brand new listing and they just canceled our 2-month booking. The look on both of our faces, it was like we had won the lottery. We are so happy and so elated. And I was like, it's a sign. This is like the biggest sign. This has never happened before. We are going to Budapest. That minute, Sol gets on his phone. He messages the landlord and the people that had this apartment and asks them, hi, we're from Australia. We'd love to do a video call. Is the place still available? And it's been like 3 weeks now since we've seen the place. We thought it could be gone by now because this place is gorgeous. 2 days later, we did a tour of this place on a video call. And then I think a week later, we signed all of the contracts. And then 3 weeks later, we are here in Budapest in a completely new reality. We signed a lease and that's how I ended up in Budapest. And it's so interesting because like I said, I didn't plan to be here, but I feel like the universe has always wanted me to be here for a chapter. And I, in my heart, have always wanted to come here for a chapter. And I've had this very clear idea that I was meant to come here. And I have no friends in Budapest. I have no family in Budapest. I have no heritage, no ties to Hungary. There is nothing that I know in this city other than this like intuitive nudge and this expansive, magnetic, crazy, connected, spiritual feeling that I have towards this city. And it has been the best move that I think I have made in many, many years. It feels very, very similar to when I moved to Bali for the first time. It just felt so easy. It was so meant to be. It was something that was divinely guided and it was just such an intuitive choice and everything just unfolded in perfect time and completely supported. There's just been so many things that have gone right. The landlords have been great. The people that we're dealing with are fantastic. The real estate agent, all the people that we've met, all the places, the area that we're in, everything works. There's no craziness. It's been perfect. And ever since I've gotten here, I have just unlocked like a new level of creativity and peace and self-belief. And it's so funny because I really do believe that wherever you go in your life, like that's where you are. I think sometimes we have this idea that we can just run away from our problems and move to an island or move to a city and it's going to solve everything. And I think that while places can impact us and they can support us, that we shouldn't look at our life like that because just running away isn't going to solve all of your problems because wherever you go, like there you are, you've still got your shit. But I feel like I'm just in a place in my life where I've worked so much on so many different aspects of myself and continuing to work on different aspects of myself that when I come to certain places in the world, there is this undeniable connection and energy that I feel and all like this soul tie that I can't describe. And there's obviously a reason why I've ended up in Budapest. Back 10 years ago, I thought I was going to come to Budapest to write a book. And it's so funny because like obviously now I've written my book, Magnetic is out. And I was thinking back to how I've been thinking about Budapest over the last 10 years. And I found with my literary agent, Jessica, I had said to her while I was writing Magnetic, maybe I'll go and write Magnetic in Budapest because my soul has always known that I was going to write here. And now I'm just sitting in this apartment with literally my books behind me on this gorgeous bookshelf that's completely out of my vision board movie. I can't tell you how much of a manifestation this bookshelf is. And I've written my first book and I'm like, well, maybe I'm going to write my second book here, or maybe there's another writing project here, or like a creativity project. I don't know, but there is something about me in this city. And although it took me 10 years to come back here, quite literally a decade, my soul always knew I was meant to come back here. And there was a reason why I was meant to be here. And like I said, I don't know what the reason is. None of it makes logical sense, but I'm here. It's been an absolute trip. It's been the best move that I've made. And now that I've shared this story, I really want to reflect it back to you because this move to me has been such a reminder in the universe has like a plan for us far greater than what we could ever imagine. And that often things happen not on the timeline that we desire them to happen, but they happen on divine time. And I feel now with time, I'm starting to understand that often we'll actually receive messages that maybe are for a future version of us or that they're part of our path. But when we receive the message, it doesn't necessarily make sense. So a decade ago, when I received the message that I was going to write a book and that I was going to move here for a chapter, I was on my first ever Europe trip. Like, it didn't make any sense. Like, I didn't know any Hungarian. I didn't have any connections to Hungary. Like, it was just another place that I was visiting. And sure, I felt amazing here, but was I going to leave my whole entire life in Sydney, where all of my jobs and opportunities and work were at the time, to come to Hungary and live here? No. But 10 years later, I built all of my businesses. I'm now a digital nomad. I'm completely remote. Of course, I can move here. It makes sense. So I really do believe I'm starting to understand as I get older that there are certain messages and certain intuitive nudges that we might have received years ago that didn't make sense when we received them, but maybe they make sense now. Maybe there's something that you can act on in the future. So I want to invite you to write down in your diary and do a little bit of journaling today after this episode. What have you been hearing from the universe? What signs have you been getting? What intuitive pulls have you been getting? And even if these signs and these pulls and these impulses and this energy that you're receiving doesn't make sense now, that's okay. So much of what we receive on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't necessarily have to make sense in the moment, because I really do believe that you can't always connect the dots going forward, but so often we can connect the dots going back. Often it's not until we have certain experiences, or we meet certain people, we go through certain things, that things start to piece together and make sense. But we can ignore that voice because it doesn't make sense now, and we can push it away and be like, oh, that's crazy. I could never do that. But how do you know you could never do it? How do you know that that's not possible for you? You have no idea who you're going to meet, what you're going to do, how your life is going to change in a year. So I want to invite you to be more open to the mystical, the magical, be more open to the signs and the synchronicities and the things that you can't explain. Because I have spent so much of my life being logical, trying to make sense of things. And even on this podcast, if I'm honest with you, I was thinking about this before getting on the mic today. I have really pushed myself in my own career with what I do, even with writing my book and in the personal growth space and with social media. I have definitely pushed myself to be as logical and scientific as I can in a way that isn't boring to people, because I want to have the things that I teach to be grounded in something so that the skeptics can understand them, so that it can be more widely accepted. But I feel like sometimes in doing that, I have ignored or probably minimized the unexplainable, the mystical, the spiritual, the sacred. And there is so much that we can't explain in this life, right? There are so many things that we cannot see that are happening all around us. I think sometimes we need to open ourselves up and realize that not everything is going to make sense. And sometimes we're just going to get downloads and feelings and just pulls that you can't describe or you can't find a study for, but they are still true. And not everything has to be grounded in fact, and not everything has to make sense. And I want to remind you, if you never take the risk, if you never say yes, if you never take the leap, you'll never know. And if you never know, you'll never know. You'll literally never know. So why don't you just do it and find out? Why don't you just treat life like an experiment? Why don't you just do things that don't make logical sense just to see if there's something else there waiting for you? Because so many of the things that I have done, they do not make logical sense to anyone. They do not make sense on paper. But let me tell you something, they make sense to my soul. They make sense to my life path, my intuition. And the more I follow my own true intuition and my own true alignment, the better my life gets. And I really do believe the better your life will get as well. So now I've shared how I got here. You're probably wondering how long I'm going to stay for. What is the plan? If you haven't already noticed, there is no plan. The plan is to follow my intuition. And I know that probably sounds wild to some people, but I have literally built my life and my businesses to be able to live my life like this. This has been a very intentional life design. No one just handed me this life design and said, you can just do whatever you want, whenever you want. Like, I built my companies, my team, the things that I do all around my desire to just do things on my own accord. And I'm just going to take full advantage of that for the next little while. So I have missed you on the podcast so much. I have so much planned over summer for podcast episodes. And now that I'm back and settled and I am all kind of back in a flow in Budapest, and I'm not moving around the world and running retreats, I'll be back on the mic regularly. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please let me know. Send me a message or share that you're listening to it on stories. It just always reminds me when I hear from you guys after doing a podcast episode that you're there, you're out there, that you're listening, because sometimes it can just feel like talking to an echo chamber. So I absolutely love when you guys reach out or share that you're listening to the podcast, because it helps me be more connected to you. And yeah, I often, like, whenever someone messages me that they're listening to the podcast, I'll go through like everyone's accounts that said that they're listening or sharing. And then when I'm doing this podcast, I'm always imagining the people that message me. I'm always imagining you. And that just really helps me build a deeper connection with this incredible community that we have cultivated over the years. I hope it inspired you to just remember that things are always working out, that there are signs that don't necessarily make sense in the moment, but often they will make sense years later down the track, or they are just intuitive nudges to keep following a path that maybe you're ignoring and believing could not work out, when really it is there and ready for you, waiting for you to say yes. I'm sending you so much love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for joining me for this episode. You can discover more from Mindspo on Instagram and TikTok by following @Mindspo and myself @Rochelle_Fox. If this episode inspired you, then please pass it on and share the love. And lastly, always remember, you create your own reality. So go and make some magic.